You always hear about coding and software, and you might think, well, it's just one person in a dark room hunched over a keyboard, like a lone wolf kind of thing.
Right, right.
But the reality is it's way more collaborative,
Oh, yeah, for sure.
like almost everything we use digitally these days.
Absolutely. It's a team effort.
Yeah, and that's what we're going to kind of dig into today.
Yeah, peel back the layers, right?
Exactly. Like, how do these teams actually work together? How do they give each other credit?
And how do they keep track of it all? Because it can get pretty messy.
Oh, yeah, especially with big projects,
Huge. And that's where documentation comes in.
which we'll definitely get to.
Oh, we're going deep on that.
So, to kind of set the stage, we've been looking at some resources, some YouTube videos, actually.
Yeah, good stuff from AP Computer Science Principles.
Yeah, they're really good at breaking down those core concepts, getting to the fundamentals.
Yep, the building blocks of it all.
Exactly. And our mission today is to really pull out those essential insights for you, the listener.
Yeah, we want to make it clear how important giving credit is in coding and why documentation is so crucial.
Not just a chore, but essential.
Exactly. It's like the backbone of good software.
Okay, so let's start with this idea that coding, making software, it's not a solo thing.
Right. I mean, you might whip up a quick little program by yourself,
Yeah, like a simple script or something.
but when you think about the big stuff, the apps we use daily, the complex websites, those are team efforts.
Oh yeah, huge teams sometimes.
Absolutely. The videos we watched talked about teams ranging from a handful of people to literally hundreds, even thousands.
Wow, that's wild.
Yeah, and each person focuses on a specific part, like a cog in a big machine.
So it's not like one lead programmer takes all the credit.
No,
right?
not at all. It's about acknowledging everyone's contribution.
Right, like each piece of the puzzle.
Exactly. And they track this through documentation, usually within the code itself.
So it's all very organized and transparent.
In theory, yeah, but it can definitely get complicated.
And speaking of giving credit, it's not just your teammates. You got to acknowledge, right?
Oh yeah, good point. There's a ton of pre-existing code out there that developers use all the time.
Like building blocks, right?
Yeah, why reinvent the wheel, they call it.
Makes sense. It'd be crazy to start from scratch every time.
Totally. But it's kind of like using someone else's research paper. Gotta cite your sources.
Oh yeah, plagiarism and all that.
Exactly. So in coding, you gotta give credit to the original author of the code you're using.
And that's where documentation comes in again.
Big time. It's like a bibliography for the software.
So you can see exactly where each piece of code came from.
Yep. Every little snippet, who wrote it, where it came from, it's all documented.
And this is important for any code that's not your own.
That's the key. If you wrote it yourself, you're good.
But if you borrow anything, even a tiny bit, it needs to be documented.
Absolutely. Gotta give credit where credit is due.
Okay, so we've talked about why documentation matters, but what exactly is it?
So it's basically a written record of the whole program, like a blueprint.
Oh, I get it. So you can see how everything works together.
Right. But it's more than just what the code does, it's how it was developed, who worked on it.
Like a history book for the software.
Kinda. And the important thing is it's not just done at the end.
Oh, so it's not like you finish coding and then write it all down.
Nope. It happens throughout the whole process from start to finish.
So what kind of stuff is actually in the documentation?
Well, everything, really.
Would be specific.
Okay, so first you have the overall description, what the program does, its purpose.
Okay, the big picture.
Then you get into the specifics like the functions, procedures, methods, all those technical details.
The nitty-gritty.
Exactly. And then you document the development process, like what choices were made, any problems they faced.
Oh, so it's not just about the code itself, but the journey of creating it.
Right. And then, of course, you list all the contributors who worked on what? Their roles.
So a complete record of everyone's involvement.
And you also document how the program interacts with other programs because it's rarely a standalone thing.
Right, like how it fits into the larger ecosystem.
Exactly. So documentation covers every aspect, from the initial idea to the final product.
Wow, that's a lot of work.
It is, but it's crucial. It makes the software so much better in the long run.
So how does it actually help?
Well, first off, it makes the coding itself more efficient.
How so?
Because if you have good documentation, you can easily understand the code.
Even if you didn't write it yourself.
Right. Or if you come back to it after a long time, it's all there, clear as day.
That makes sense.
And it also helps with testing and finding bugs.
Oh, because you know exactly what each part is supposed to do.
Yep, so you can easily spot any errors or inconsistencies.
And if there's a problem, you can quickly figure out who worked on that part.
Exactly. The documentation tells you who to contact, so you can fix it faster.
So it's not just about giving credit, it's about making the software better and easier to work with.
Absolutely. It's about collaboration, efficiency, and quality.
Okay, now let's talk about a specific type of documentation, something called comments,
Yes. Comments, they're basically notes within the code itself.
like little explanations for humans to read.
Exactly. The computer completely ignores them. They don't affect how the program runs.
So it's like leaving breadcrumbs for yourself or others who might work on the code later.
That's a great analogy. It's like saying, hey, this is what this section does, or this is why I did it this way.
So it's super helpful for understanding the thought process behind the code.
Especially in big teams where multiple people are working on different parts.
Right. It helps everyone stay on the same page.
And it prevents a lot of confusion and headaches down the line.
So are comments used in every programming language?
Well, most of them, but there are a few exceptions.
Really? Why is that?
Some older or more specialized languages might not have built-in support for comments.
Oh, so what do?
They have to use workarounds like separate documents to keep track of explanations.
That sounds kind of clunky.
It can be, but thankfully most modern languages have comment features.
And they all use the same syntax, right?
Actually, no, each language has its own way of doing it.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, like in Python, you use the hash symbol, hashtag, to start a comment.
Pretty simple.
And then in Java, you have a couple of options.
Like what?
You can use 2 slashes for single-line comments or /* for multi-line comments.
Multi-line, so you can write a whole paragraph if you need to.
Exactly. And they even have special Java comments that are used for generating documentation automatically.
Wow, that's pretty advanced.
In other languages like JavaScript, C, C++, R, they all have their own comment conventions too.
So it's a bit of a mix, but the concept is the same.
Right. It's all about adding human-readable explanations to the code.
And what about those visual programming languages like Scratch?
Oh, yeah. They have cool ways of doing comments too.
Like what?
In Scratch, you can attach a little comment box to each block.
So it's visually connected to the code.
Yep. And you can collapse it if you don't need to see it all the time.
That's neat.
And in App Inventor, they use a question mark bubble.
Oh, I've seen that. It's like a little thought bubble.
Exactly. And you click on it to see the comment.
So even in visual coding, documentation is still important.
Absolutely. It's essential for understanding and maintaining the code.
Okay, so it's clear that acknowledging sources and writing good documentation, including comments, are crucial for making software better.
Couldn't agree more. It's about being ethical, efficient, and collaborative.
And it all comes down to respect, really.
Respect for other programmers, for the users, and for the craft itself.
Well said. So to wrap things up, let's recap the key takeaways.
Shoot.
First, software development is a team sport.
Almost always.
Second, we need to give credit where credit is due, just like in any other field.
Cite your sources, people.
And finally, documentation is key, both for the developers and for anyone who uses the software.
It's the glue that holds it all together.
Now, here's a little something to think about as you go about your day.
I'm listening.
All those apps you use, all those websites you visit, they're all built on this foundation of collaboration and documentation.
And probably a lot of late nights and coffee.
Yeah, for sure. But think about it, it changes how you view these things, right?
It does. It makes you appreciate the complexity and the human effort behind it all.
And it makes you wonder about all the other unseen processes that make our digital world possible.
That's a great point. It's a whole world hidden beneath the surface.
And who knows what other amazing collaborations and innovations are happening right now.
It's exciting to think about.
It is. And that's something we'll keep exploring in future deep dives.
Looking forward to it.
Me too. Thanks for joining us.
My pleasure.